What's going on, everybody? Thanks for checking out the Among the Ashes podcast. We're your hosts, Wes and Krys. On tonight's episode, we're speaking with Ryan Tremblay. Ryan is a cryptozoologist and a Native American folklorist. He specializes in the legends of the Wendigo and the Skinwalker from the Navajo nations. Ryan shares what he believes these things are, and he dives into how he thinks that pop culture has misrepresented these beings. He also shares an interesting story about an encounter he has one night with a hyena-looking creature that he believes to be a dogman. I'm going to put a disclaimer right here. Tonight's episode is not for children or for people that get creeped out easily. Also, as a Christian, I recommend that you stop right here and you pray and you ask Jesus to cover and protect you. The last thing that we want is for something to attach itself to anyone through this podcast or through this episode. With that being said, get ready for a creepy yet interesting look into the Navajo culture, the Wendigo, the Skinwalker, along with some other cryptids mixed in. This is When to Go and When Not to Go, plus Skinwalker Legends with Ryan Tremblay. So we were talking about Skinwalkers. So I got a question there before we move on. So there's a new TV show out that talks about Skinwalker Ranch.
Right.
So is this is in the area where this would be, I assume?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's 4 sacred mountains. There's actually 6, but the 4 of them are the most sacred of the 6. And within those 4, it's Arizona, Colorado, and Utah. So Skinwalker Ranch is well within that vicinity.
So do you think that these people are hitting on something, or do you think it's just I mean, obviously it's a money grab, TV.
Yeah, I think some of it, I think the earlier events, like, before it became really publicized, were, possibly true. I think a lot of it nowadays is sensationalism.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a money grab. You mentioned the name Skinwalker anywhere and people are like flocking to see what you got. I mean, TikTok, Instagram, you hashtag Skinwalker. Everybody's running over there to see what it is. So I do think there's some sensationalism going on there.
Even though they really have no clue to what they're opening themselves up to.
And and those people that are doing that, I'm just like, you all got to be careful, man. I mean, tampering with Skinwalkers, that's not smart. You got to know what you're doing. You absolutely have to know what you're doing.
Well, not only that, but then are you angering the Navajo nation, the Navajo people? You know what I mean? By stepping on their culture. And even though that may be a negative thing in their culture, I would still think that if you are presenting them in some sort of negative light, how much are you stepping on them? And then, what do you get into from there?
Right. Well, that brings up what I tell people. I know a lot of ghost hunters that like to go out and they like to try to find Skinwalkers. Okay. And I tell them, when you go out, be respectful, because you get to go home. All right. You get to leave that area. You're probably going to a different state because you fly from one place to Arizona to do this stuff, which is fine and dandy. Nothing happens to you. You go home, you live a peaceful life. But the reservation people, the ones that live on that reservation, they have to clean up the mess that you created.
Right. What have you up and brought there?
Right. So don't go and stir something up, because then these people got to deal with what you brought upon them. And that's not right to do. That's why I avoid doing anything disrespectful.
Well, not only are you bringing in ignorant human beings that just want to trample all over your land that's already been stolen from you anyway, and that's another topic we can get into another day. But you've got people that were forced into these places, and they've made it their home, whether it's for good or bad. They can how they want to treat it because it's theirs. But then you get ignorant human beings that come and want to stomp and trample all over it. And even if you don't personally, I mean, I don't believe the way they believe, but I respect the way they believe.
Right.
And so many people, I'm sure, take that stuff for a joke. You know what I mean? I'm going to have a good time. And I know, I don't really believe in what I'm doing, but I'm going and stomping all. It's just like these people that go to graveyards and things like that.
Yep.
It's like, look, I personally, those people aren't there. Their bodies are there. That's like decoration is real big in the South, and for anybody that's listening to this that goes to decoration, please don't be offended by this. Time to me, you know what I mean? My grandfather is buried in a graveyard. I've got a cousin that was like a brother that's buried in a graveyard, but they're not there. I never have to go back there and pay my respects. But when I do, I'm respectful. You know what I mean? I'm not going to go there in hopes of seeing a ghost or a dog man or something crazy like that, just because I want to respect every single person whose life is no longer, but also respect the loved ones of the people that have lost loved ones, So I think the same thing with going to these nations and doing that. You're disrespecting them as a people and what they've worked for. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And then if skinwalkers are real or whatever demonic forces may be there, you're inviting them to that place or stirring them up, and the people have to deal with the mess from that.
Yeah. Yeah. I won't go unless I get permission. Like if I have a planned skinwalker investigation, I'll call the tribal police. I'll call people that I know that live there. And if they say no, it's no. I won't go and sneak up on the property. I won't sneak in there. If they tell me, no, you can't go on this day, then, oh, well, I don't get to go. That's how you show them the proper respect.
I mean, that would be like me going to a non-believer's house and say, I'm going to anoint your house and whatever, and for you to give your life to Christ. Well, as much as I want you to give your life to Christ, if that's not what you want, I can't afford that, and I need to respect that. And at that point, all I can do is pray for you that your eyes and your heart's open. But if I just bust up in your door and say, hey, this is what's happening, you for sure are going to reject Jesus. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's going to create that animosity. And that's the last thing you want to do. Yeah.
So Krys, you said you had something happen to you.
Yeah. So when you were talking about your skinwalker encounter out in the desert and everything. So when I was younger, I was probably in high school at the time. We went to the movie theater, and when the movie gets out, everybody walks out at the same time. When you got like 100 people in there, it was one of those new movies that just come out. I don't even remember what it was. We were walking out. And as we were walking out, all of a sudden, I felt something come over me, kind of like you did, and my heart started racing real fast. Whoa. And I looked over, and there was a guy sitting at like a bench, like right there, kind of like where you could eat, I guess, in the theater. Yeah. And I looked over at him, and he was just looking at me, and he had this smirk, like this grin on his face. Ooh. So he knew that I knew something wasn't right, but nobody else could get bothered by it. But I panicked, like I freaked out, like I ran out of there. Like after that happened, I don't know what it was. I mean, in my mind, I'm thinking it may have been somebody that might have been oppressed or possessed or something. But like he knew that I knew. And
that's your intuition. A lot of people discredit the intuition. When somebody feels something about a certain person, you should never, ever just ignore that. That's your inner intuition saying, hey, there's something wrong with this person. This isn't a good person. You should get away. I believe that you even got to be careful with like who you let touch you.
Yeah, 100%.
Talking about it.
I know that might sound weird, but I feel like if somebody's really not a good person and they have tremendous negative energy, if they touch you, they take away your positive energy and they transfer that negative. So you feel sick. You feel like, you just ran a triathlon or something because you're not used to that kind of negative energy. So you're just like, what happened? And you got to be careful.
There was a movie years ago with Denzel Washington, and the spirit was Azazel. So, and I'm a firm believer that Hollywood, I'll tell the story in just a minute, but a firm believer that Hollywood knows more than we know. And
I'm sure they do.
Us through movies. That's like the whole Skinwalker Ranch thing. I think they're telling us it's there without telling us it's there. Yeah. It's sold to us as truth, but we still know it's doctored Hollywood stuff. That's and honestly, that's where I think the Dogman comes from, or the werewolf. That's where I think a lot of these spiritual. My personal belief is, in order for now, I do believe there are spirits that are bound to earth, as far as fallen spirits, Nephilim, things like that. But I think that in order for these things to continually stay in this realm and not have to go back to the other side, and people, you get into talks about portals and other dimensions. I don't think that there's other dimensions, as in there's another Wesley in another dimension, but I believe heaven's another dimension or hell's another dimension, and I believe for these things to be able to stay in our realm, they have to take on some sort of physical form, and that's where I go down the road on Sasquatch and Dogman or whatever, is that it's sort of spirit transforming into an animal. But that movie, I can't remember the name of the movie now, but in that movie, the spirit is Azazel and it transfers through touch. Yep. Well, Azazel is an actual Nephilim or fallen angel. Yeah.
I know what movie you're talking about. I forgot the name too, but remember the guys walking around singing the Rolling Stones "Time Is on My Side."
That's it. And it transfers through touch, and that's where I guess where I'm going with this is that I 100% am on that level too. Is that it is if they're negative, you need to stay away from them, back as far away as you can.
So with your thoughts on Bigfoot and stuff, though, I agree with you to an extent. It's a theory I've been pushing forward for a long time that when people are seeing like dogmen in the urban areas, or like they're seeing the Bigfoot that cloak, or the the cryptids that are bulletproof or whatever, I wonder if there is some form of thought form. Okay. So I'm of the mind that there's two different things going on here. There's probably many more, but I think there's two. I think we're seeing the flesh and blood ones, which are those are the ones that will just, run by and not bother anybody. They're not aggressive. But when people have those really violent encounters, I don't think that's the real Bigfoot or the real Dogman. I think those are thought forms, and we already think of them negatively. We're already afraid of them. So these thought forms manifest with that negative energy intact. So because we're so afraid of them and everything, we have a predetermined idea of what they're going to do to us. Right. So these thought forms attack these people. And that's why there's no bodies. There's no proof that this actually happens. There's just energy taking the form of what we fear the most.
And I can agree with that. That's probably a better way of putting what I think. As far as Sasquatch goes or Bigfoot, I think that there's more possibility that could be out there than a werewolf. You know,
right? I mean? Well, I mean, I've had my own Dogman encounter. It was a hyena-like thing, and I don't even like to say it was a Dogman, to be quite honest with you, because it wouldn't make sense. Hyenas aren't canines, okay? Yeah. So whatever I saw, it was definitely hyena-like, 100%. Was it a Dogman? Probably not. I don't want to call it a Dogman.
Yeah. And that's my thing is like I've seen some things in my life that I can't explain, you know what I mean? But it's not what it doesn't go the route that other people's thoughts go, you know what I mean? So I teeter back and forth is the things I've experienced. Most of the things that I've experienced are spiritual. There are some things that are physical that it's like, okay, how does that happen? Could it have happened? Or is my mind playing a trick on me? Or is it, so I naturally go to the spiritual side. I'm open to the other. But I have a friend, or Krys and I have a friend that when he was a child in probably when did Star Wars come out? The first Star Wars?
Like 1977.
77. Okay. So Greg this probably would have been the it was before Star Wars came out. It was the early 70s, and he's still of age to ride the school bus. Well, he is in the bed one night, and he said he rolls over and there's this figure in his room, and it's wearing a dark cloak. And when it turned and he saw its face, it was red. It had yellow eyes. He said, Wesley, it was Darth Maul is what I saw. Basically. This is way before that come out now.
Yeah, he was seeing Darth Maul way before Phantom Menace was even a thing.
Right. So, and I'm a Star Wars guy, but either way, so he said this thing is looking at him, and it said, I'm here to take you. Like you never, I'm basically going to end you before you can start. Now, Greg is a phenomenal children's minister, and he has ministered to thousands of kids, and so many kids have come to Christ under him. And Satan has tried to take him out. I mean, he had open heart surgery a few years back, or probably a year and a half or so ago now, and he's still got an open wound from it that's trying. I mean, devil has just fought him tooth and nail. But anyway, he said this thing basically tells him he's going to take him out before he can ever do anything for God. And he's a pastor's kid. Well, his dad walks in and flips the light on and said it didn't go anywhere. So it just looked over at his dad and looked back at him. And his dad was like, well, son, I'm going to bed. I love you. Good night. And turned the light out. And said the thing looked back at him and said all he could do was utter Jesus. And said when he said Jesus, it disappeared.
Wow.
He gets up and goes to the bus stop and said his buddy's sitting there. So they had this little thing. It was like a little covered bench that they sat under waiting on the bus, and said his buddy is white as a sheet, just white. And he's like, man, what's wrong? He said, dude, you wouldn't believe me if I told you. He said, well, no, tell me, what'd you see? He said, there was this being in my room this morning. Like as I was leaving, I got up, I turned around, there he was, dark cloak, red face, yellow eyes. He said it was the same thing that I had seen that night. Well, he had told me that story probably 8 or 10 years ago, and I've got tons of stories like that. But he said, when he told me that story, I was like, man, that is so crazy that it looked like Darth Maul. He said, Wesley, when I watched The Phantom Menace, like I can't watch it. You know what I mean? It makes me, it bothers me. Well, lo and behold, about a month ago, I'm listening to YouTube like I do at work, and this guy comes on and he's sharing his story, and he starts talking about how he thinks Hollywood, naturally Satan works in that realm. And he said that he said before he would have been, this guy was probably in the early 80s or so. He was a preteen, saw Darth Maul, the same thing. You know what I mean? So I say and I chase a lot of rabbits, but I say all that to say, I think that a lot of these things, I think the veil is thinning, number one.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that either Satan takes our deepest, darkest fears and runs with them and creates something, or
Mm-hmm.
maybe that spirit realm talks to certain people. And I don't want to say Spielberg is a bad person or a demon possessed or anything like that. That's not what I'm saying. But I think there's a lot to be said for that. I think we create a lot, and it goes back to the cloaking Bigfoots or
Just
whatever.
to add to that, though, I mean, think about the state of the world right now. It's more negative than it's ever been. You know,
Absolutely.
I mean, you can't say anything anywhere without somebody coming at you for it. You know, so
Absolutely.
I think that negative energy, it has to go somewhere. You know, I mean, it's not going to just dissipate. So I think a lot of that negative energy is building up, and that's why we're seeing a lot of this dangerous demonic stuff, because we're so negative. We as a human race, we're not good to each other right now.
Right.
And we really got to start working on it. We got to start being kinder to each other. We got to start caring about each other again.
Absolutely. The fact of the matter is, if you're a Christian and I'm not, that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
You can worship Satan. We can still have a conversation. You know what
like
I mean?
I tell people all the time, you can have different opinions. It doesn't mean I don't like you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
We can be on total opposite sides of the fence, and I'm still going to call you a friend.
Yeah.
We don't have to hate each other.
Yeah, and that's the key. I don't know if you picked up on that. We had a little bit of I guess, internet lag, but yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's in my early state as a Christian, I was very much judgmental. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're homosexual, you need to get saved. You know what I mean? You need to change your life. Well, now my opinion is I know what the Bible says, but that doesn't mean I can't love you. That doesn't mean, because your sin is no greater than mine. Just because you're a drug addict doesn't mean that you're a horrible person. You got a problem. I can be just as horrible of a person as a Christian as somebody living in the world. Or as a sinner, and if you remove that aspect out of it, out the Christianity side out of it, we just need to be better to one another as people in general.
We need to put religion aside. We need to put ethnicity aside. We need to put a lot of things aside and just treat each other like we're brother and sister. That's what we need to
respect one another and move forward. So anyway, that's a whole nother can of worms that I'm sure I'll get canceled for one day if I ever. I mean, there's probably 3 people listening, but so that being said, so we kind of went over the Skinwalker a little bit. So talk a little bit about the Wendigo. Tell us about it.
Okay, so before I even start about the Wendigo, I want to put a disclaimer out there. So if anybody listening has any little kids within earshot, put them to bed, because this gets really dark and really gory really fast. So, okay, the Wendigo with the Algonquin, the Cree, the Ojibwe, and some other tribes. The Wendigo is a spirit that will come onto a person and possess them when certain cultural taboos are broken. Cannibalism, like I said earlier, is the most prominent. It's the most popular. But they can also become that through greed, or they can get cursed by a shaman. Now, a lot of people will tell you there's no historical evidence for the Wendigo, and that is not true. Okay, in 1888, closer to 1889, in the winter of, there was a Cree hunter and fur trader by the name of Swift Runner. Okay, he was actually living at Fort Saskatchewan with his family. Okay, so he was a hunter, he was a medicine man, he was a father and a husband. Okay, and when you look into his backstory, people will tell you he was really well loved. He was a good father. He was a good husband, a provider. People around the fort really cared for him because he was a nice guy. Well, in that winter, he took his family to his hunting cabin. And about 3 weeks later, he comes back and his wife isn't there and his children aren't there. And they thought that was kind of odd because he always brought them wherever he went. And as he's sitting in the bar, he's telling everybody how he was starving to death while he was on this hunting trip. Weird thing is, though, guys, they noted he didn't look thinner. He looked like he had gained weight. Okay. And so they're kind of wondering, this is strange. If he was starving, how come he doesn't look sickly? How come he doesn't look starved? Well, as he's telling the story, he starts opening up more, and he tells his friends how he murdered his family, how he cannibalized them. The Wendigo made him do it. Okay. And so his friends, being of the tribe, they told the magistrates, because there was white people, there was white settlers at the time, and they were the law at that fort. So magistrates collected Swift Runner and they made him take them back to the cabin which he was staying. When they got there, guys, they found his family all right. All right. He had cracked open their skulls to get their brains. He had cracked open their femurs to suck out the marrow. And his youngest son, he hung him from a flagpole with a rope, and he would pull on his feet to make the baby cry and suffocate. And in no problem at all, nonchalantly, he would walk over to the skulls, take his 2 fingers, he would slide them through the eye sockets, lift up the skull and be like, "This was my wife." And he'd kind of wave it around playfully and just toss it aside. And he'd grab another, and "This was my son." And he just throw it aside. And they found pots, metal pots, in which he boiled human fat and human skin. And he went into detail telling of how he killed each one, how he cannibalized them, how he ate them. And so he was put on trial. And during his trial, there was, security guards that would come in to check on him every night. And there was one that was in particular. He was a short fellow, but he was very stout, very rotund. And every time he would walk in to Swift Runner's cell, Swift Runner would kind of eye him up and down. He would tell him, "You have this much fat." He would hold up 3 fingers to indicate, "You have this much fat on your bones." And so there was a Jesuit, a French Jesuit, that was trying to speak to Swift Runner, and Swift Runner maintained until the day he was executed, the Wendigo made him do it. So this guy, he was tapped by the Wendigo. There was a part of the Wendigo inside of him. And it gets even creepier when you actually read the confession of his father-in-law. You find out that they actually hunted food before they left for that cabin. So they had rabbit. They had killed a couple of rabbits. The wife could hunt, Swift Runner could hunt, and all the sons could hunt. So everybody was able-bodied and could have hunted something. He made sure they didn't do that. And you found out before he left, he was having nightmares about the Wendigo. He was seeing it in his dreams. He was seeing their representatives, the porcupine and the owl. And so he was telling people, "I'm seeing the Wendigo," and nobody did anything to stop it. So no historical evidence of a Wendigo, huh?
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm assuming this had been a part of their culture anyway, right? Like beforehand,
Yes.
they were aware of what the Wendigo was or
Yes.
where it came from. Wow, that's crazy.
That's brutal, isn't it? It's a very disturbing story.
Yeah.
I mean, when I was doing the research on this, guys, I really had to be careful not to fall into a certain mindset, because it's not just depressing. It's really like kind of sends those chills up your spine where you're like, my God, what kind of person is this? And so I had to, take breaks. When I was researching it, I would take breaks and I would, light my white sage. I would have people say prayers for me because I didn't want to fall into that. So you got to be really careful looking into this stuff.
So Ron, do you believe that, like, let's say people that are like mass murderers or serial killers, things like that, do you think they have a spirit attached to them that's
I
causing
think it's likely. I think it's very, very likely. I really do.
That's what I think of when you tell that story. I'm like, well, stuff like that happens all the time. And
yeah. Well, I mean, when people also come at me and say, there's no proof of the Wendigo, that's when you talk about Jack Fiddler. He was a Wendigo killer. So this guy, Jack Fiddler, he was also of the same tribe, okay? And his father and his father's father, they all learned how to defeat Wendigo when it possessed people. And Jack Fiddler had killed 13 Wendigos altogether. So if the tribe is saying he killed Wendigo, is there proof? Isn't that historical proof?
Yeah. Yeah, I would say so.
Uh-huh.
So the Wendigo is not only a spiritual being, would be a physical being, or take on, I guess, the form of a physical being.
I mean, it takes over the human body,
Okay.
So I mean, that's a form of possession. So when it takes over a human, it becomes a physical being, and it's not a cryptid. I see a lot of people arguing that the Wendigo is a cryptid.
That's where I was going. Are we looking for, the deer coming through the woods with the giant antlers and, like hear about skinwalkers or the classic skinwalker or Wendigo? That's what you always hear. In my opinion, that's what I've seen and heard,
Right. But that's actually very incorrect, because the way that the tribes describe it, it's a very emaciated being with really super pale skin, and the flesh around the lips and the fingertips are chewed off because it's so hungry that it's eating its own skin. And they smell horrible. They smell of death and decay. So where the stag-headed thing came in is misinterpretation. Okay. Algernon Blackwood wrote a book called The Wendigo. And within that book, he drew pictures of a being that was kind of gigantic, and it had branches stemming from its head. Now, he never meant for that to be interpreted as antlers. Okay. But, people, they were just simple at the time, and they thought, oh, it's deer antlers. And then European settlers took and they interwove their own mythologies with the Wendigo lore. So you have like Herne the Hunter, which is a Celtic thing. He's a man who wears a deer head upon his head, of all things. So you have that. And then you got like, different Nordic things that have antlers, and they all just kind of blended them together. And because it looks cooler, I understand the stag-headed furry thing looks a lot cooler than the actual depiction. That's what people think the Wendigo is.
So when you say this guy and his dad or his family, they were killing Wendigos, they're actually taking out human beings who
Yeah.
are possessed. So what happens to that possesses them at that time? It just moves to the next.
That's what I believe.
You're solving the problem of the Wendigo in your I guess your tribe or your village, for lack of better terms, but you're taking care of the individual problem there, but
Right.
you're not taking care of the problem altogether.
Yes, that's a good way to look at it, because I kind of view it with the Wendigo that there's two different kinds here. You have a Wendigo, which is the person that becomes, the vessel. But then you have the Wendigo itself, which is that spirit that's always around, especially during the darkest, coldest, bleakest winters. It's always there. You can't see it, but its presence is just kind of looming there. Like it's waiting for somebody to provoke it and to bring it on so it can possess somebody.
So it's a representation of death.
Yeah,
so.
absolutely. Absolutely.
I guess you could interpret it as the death angel, or
if you want to. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I guess, you know what I mean? I mean, I guess depending on your culture and where you're at.
Right.
So let's talk a little bit more about that story. You said how many he killed? 13?
13 of them. Yeah. Yep. And he would come in and he was violent. I mean, he would try the more simpler routes first. Like one of the easiest ways to stop a Wendigo of all things was heated beef tallow. That's beef fat.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why they did that is because they believed that the beef fat would melt the ice around the person's heart. That's when you become a Wendigo, your heart is surrounded by ice and you become, that winter spirit. So they would try beef tallow. Now, if that didn't work, they would try shaking tent ceremonies. That's where they perform, rituals and chants, and they're singing their medicine way to try to make the Wendigo spirit leave you. Well, if that didn't work, Jack Fiddler said, "Okay, I'm just going to beat the holy crap out of you," and he would beat this person until the Wendigo left.
Oh wow! So I'm picturing a White Walker is what I'm picturing.
Mm-hmm. I don't even picture that. I mean,
but I wonder if any of that's taken from that. But
oh, absolutely, it absolutely is. I mean, the Wendigo has seeped into pop culture so much, Wes, that it's almost ridiculous. I mean, Marvel Comics has a Wendigo. How many video games have there been with Wendigo in it? You got Until Dawn, you got Fallout. I mean, Wendigo shows up everywhere. So yeah, I mean, it influenced a lot of different TV shows. Hannibal had a Wendigo.
Yeah.
Charmed had a Wendigo. So that's how popular this entity has become, that it's seeped into our own culture from Native American culture.
Which is mind blowing, because I mean, there again, I know everybody likes to be scared. I don't like to be scared. Like, I don't watch horror movies. Like, Monster Squad was a little too scary for me. Kick him in the
nose. I love that movie. Oh my god!
You need to watch Monster Squad. Wait till
the name is Horace.
Yeah, it's these 4 kids and they're fighting the quintessential vampire, Frankenstein, Wolfman. But one part of the movie is
it's a cute movie though, Wes.
You don't have nards, just do it.
Wolfman's got nards.
Yeah. It's a great movie, great movie from my childhood. But when I was a kid, I was scared of everything. And it's because some things I had seen in my life, but I am fully firm on that fear is the opposite of faith. And why put yourself in a position to feel fear? I know some people like that adrenaline rush. I don't do haunted houses. I don't do scary movies. I'm serious.
Yeah. I think I'm crazy compared to you, Wes.
Yeah, 100% you are, man.
100%, undeniably so.
I love to deer hunt, but the sun's coming up and the sun's going down when I'm leaving. You know what I mean?
Oh, there you go. Yeah, I mean, when I was writing this Wendigo book, which I'm still working on, I had to conquer one of my own personal fears, and that was watch Pet Sematary. That movie, as a kid, ruined me, man. I had nightmares for weeks or even months after seeing that movie. And knowing that the Wendigo is involved in that movie, I was like, man. So I had to conquer my fear. It wasn't easy. It took me about 6 months to watch that whole movie, and I'm just like, never again.
Yeah, see, I could watch like Scream, for instance. I know it's not a horror movie, but it's in that genre. I can watch a movie about a murderer and it be as gruesome can be.
Mm-hmm.
But Freddy Krueger or Jason Voorhees, I'm out.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not watching.
There you go.
I've never seen A Nightmare on Elm Street. I've seen one Friday the 13th, and I've seen a couple of the Halloween movies, but for me, Halloween was more of just a serial killer than some sort of spiritual something.
Well, let me calm your nerves on Halloween. So the original movie, the guy who played Michael Myers, the Shape, right? His name was Nick Castle. He's a comedian. Have you seen the movie Major Payne?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Okay, Major Payne was written by Nick Castle, the guy who played Michael Myers.
Really?
Yeah.
That's
So
I didn't know that.
yeah, Michael Myers was really a comedian. Even though he's stalking Jamie Lee Curtis at every turn, he's actually a comedian who's doing, stand-up comedy.
Well, I know I never viewed Bill Shatner the same after I knew that that was his face that they used for the mask, you know what I mean? or that they, however they came about it, turned it inside out or whatever. But yeah, I just, I was never into horror movies. And there again, some of it's, I guess, stems from some things I experienced as a kid, but I just don't understand why people want to dive into, I guess because they think it's not real. You know what I mean? I've seen enough spiritual things in my life to know that it very much is real. There again, natural beings in a supernatural world. And some people don't want to go down the woo of everything. They just make a joke of it. But like I don't, because I think that it genuinely can, if you're not prepared, you're genuinely opening yourself up to something that you don't need to open yourself up into, if that makes
100%. 100%.
Like Ron was saying, I mean, he does it with respect when he goes out and does things. Where when other people are watching these movies, they're doing it out of disrespect. I mean, essentially, poking fun, this and that, and then next thing you know.
Well, it's for shock value, for clicks, for views.
I don't believe in doing that. That's why, if you notice, I don't publicize any of my investigations. I don't put them on YouTube. I don't show them on Facebook. Because, it's almost an intimate thing, okay? With my case, the way that the Navajo allowed me to go look on their land, to me, it's like, well, you respected me by saying, yes, you can do it. I'm going to show you that respect by not showing off your land. I'm not going to exploit it. I'm not going to exploit the people. So anything that I see, it's for me to see and nobody else.
Well, and that's why I was, I guess, I don't know if you felt that I was timid whenever I asked you to be a part. I was like, man, he's always got, and I was telling Krys, he's always just got something interesting. You know what I mean? And it's, your approach is a lot different, really, probably totally different than most of what I see or what I've experienced in these different.
I appreciate that. I will take that compliment.
And I was thinking of different guests, and I was like, well, I've never seen him do an interview. I don't know if he does, and I said, but I'll reach out and see what his take on is. If he says no, he says no, but
I love doing interviews, man. I do a lot of them, actually, believe it or not. I've been on numerous shows, especially the past couple months. I've been so busy with all these different shows. I'm like, oh my goodness, what's going on here?
Well, one thing for me was like, I just never see you promote that. And maybe I'm not looking for it either. You know what I mean?
I'm pretty humble, Wes. I don't like to, I don't want people to think I'm in this for the money or whatever, because I'm really not. I'm really, really not. I'm in it for, the learning experience, for, meeting people like you guys, and to get my books and stuff out there. I'm not in it for the money, man. This is all a big learning experience for me.
Right. And this is definitely, I guess if you had to pick a genre for us to be in, this is definitely not what our show has been about so far, but it's okay. I've got a few other people that are going to.
You say that it's not, but really it does tie in. I mean,
it does. It does. It ties in spiritually, I mean, for sure.
Because he was talking about earlier, be careful who you touch, if they've got a negative spirit on them. Well, the same goes for anybody that you're talking to who's negative. If you're around negativity, you're going to be negative. I mean,
for sure.
It's just going to happen.
For sure, 100%.
I definitely think it still falls in. It's just,
I agree.
Look at it.
Krys needs better friends because I'm negged out all the time.
Gonna start calling you negs.
No, he's one of the most positive people I know, so he definitely rubs off on me, and I'm not rubbing off on him.
Yeah, hopefully. But some days when I do have a negative day, it throws my wife into a loop because she's like, you're not supposed to be negative.
She's like, have you been talking to Wes? So back to the Wendigo. So anything else you want to share? Anything else you can tell us about that?
Yeah, I mean, that's another entity that really, if you're going to look into it, do it with the utmost respect. Take preparations. Like whenever you're going to read anything or talk to anybody about it, say prayers first, okay? Because it's a very dark matter and your mind can go into those places real easily. And just, don't believe everything you hear. That's one thing I had to learn to do with my research and investigations. If somebody comes to you and said, oh, hey, I'm in, say California, for example, and I saw this deer-headed thing and it was a Wendigo, then tell them, no, here, let's take a look at the Native American culture. Let's see what they say about it. And then let's figure out what it is you might have seen, because Wendigo don't have deer head. And, that's actually another one of my missions there too, Wes, is to stop with that deer-headed Wendigo and start showing people what it really looks like so that the tribes aren't going, stupid people, you know?
Well, it's funny you say that. Like, so when we ended just a minute ago, I told Krys, I was like, we probably should have prayed before this. Nothing towards you by any means, but it's like, let's stop just a minute and let's pray about this. So we did, and I would definitely preface anybody before you look into anything. I don't care what it is. If it's getting in the woo, you definitely should be up. Whatever you believe in. My personal belief is you need to talk to Jesus. That's my thing. But if you believe in lighting sage or you believe in whatever, you know what I mean? Whatever you feel like brings you protection, I would say do that. And when it doesn't work, then call on Jesus. But but yeah, I mean, don't just dive into something.
No.
Just because you think it's cool and fun, you know what I mean? Because somewhere down the line, there are people out there, as in the Native Americans, the Navajo, that take this very seriously. And not only are you opening yourself up, but you may be opening them up, doing so.
It's like I say, know before you go. And I don't mean that just in a physical aspect. Like, don't just know the area you're going to. Know exactly what it is you're dealing with. You know, I mean, Wendigo, skinwalkers, they're not cryptids, okay? They're not something that you're going to go out and, leave food for and it's to become your buddy. It's not like the Bigfoot stories you hear. This is actually the polar opposite, I would say. In my opinion, it's a complete and total opposite of Bigfoot, because you hear the pleasant interactions with Bigfoot, you hear the habituating, you hear the people seeing them and no harm comes to them. Wendigo and skinwalkers, I would say, are like the antithesis of that. They're just like, they're not the ones that are going to leave you alone. So whenever you investigate or research this kind of stuff, know before you go, okay? Know how dark it can be, know how dangerous it can be.
Well, I would say that even with Sasquatch and Bigfoot, I mean, in my opinion, the people that are going out and trying to habituate, and I know, I mean, you take the gorillas, Jane Goodall and all those people, and you see the documentaries now where the people are actually, it's like, man, how are they really that close? Yeah, they're legit that close. I mean, they're within, I'm sure their cameras are great, but they're within 50 yards or closer to these chimpanzees, these gorillas. And the only reason they can do that is because people have went there years and years and years and never threatened them. But the full reality of it is that mug will pull your arms off and beat you to death with them.
Absolutely. Yeah. When I worked at the zoo in Tucson, I volunteered at the zoo for a while. They used to tell me all the time, do not make eye contact with the gorillas. Do not stare any of the apes into the eyes. Because if you do, he's going to take it as a threat and a challenge. He's going to come at you. And even a monkey, a chimpanzee, can really do some severe damage to you.
Yeah. Well, they'll pull your face off. They did that one lady and they lived with her. When we slept in the bed with her every night and pulled her face off.
Did you hear the theory behind that? Why it did it?
No.
Because she changed her hairstyle. So because her hairstyle was different, the chimp didn't recognize her, so it went off.
Wow. That's
crazy, isn't it?
And these people, especially Floridians, like, I love Florida and it's amazing, but like those mugs are crazy. Like, when you hear the term Florida man, like, and I follow several of them and they're entertaining but freaking you're kissing king cobras. There's two people I follow in general and they're great. They're hilarious. I love them. One of them's a tattoo artist. He's an amazing tattoo artist. The other guy is one of his buddies and I'm not going to call their names, but they have venomous snakes and crocodiles and alligators and they both have a king cobra and they go in there and I know they're around those animals every single day and they interact with them every day and they'll tell you really quickly, look, these are wild creatures. They could kill me at any moment. And that's what I'm passionate about. But it's like, bro, I don't know that I'm that passionate about anything.
Yeah.
No.
Can kill me, you know what I mean?
Yeah, you can take the beast out of the wild, but you can't take the wild out of the beast.
Absolutely. I've got a 27-pound French bulldog, but I know at any moment if she ever locked onto me, I'm in trouble. You know what I mean?
Same with my dog, Duke. I mean, he's harmless for the most part, but if he ever went rogue on me, I'd be in a lot of trouble.
We had a bull one time growing up, and a big old Brahma bull, and I'm 6'2", and his hump was probably, I could look his hump. Like if we were looking in the eyes, we're looking at one another. His hump just timeless. He was huge, had these big, massive horns. And my stepdad was always like, look, he's gentle, but don't get in there with him. And he'd come up to the gate, come up to the fence. You could pet that mug all day long and he wouldn't have meant to hurt you. But when he's, nudging you, whatever, he'd throw you across the no questions asked. You know what I mean? And it's one of those things. He's still a wild animal. I tell people all the time, I'm not riding anything that's got a mind of its own. I'm not getting on a horse or, and as much as my dog knows I'm the master, at the end of the day, that dog would do a lot more damage to me than I want it to. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Chihuahuas, they're the most fierce creatures in the world, if you ask me.
They're little jerks, man. Chihuahuas are just
they
like
are,
aggressive as can be.
That and Pomeranians. My sister-in-law had a Pomeranian one time, and I hated that dog, man. And that mug, she was out on a date one night, and I'm laying on their couch asleep, and she comes home, and that friggin' dog jumps up on my chest and pees right all over my chest and jumped at me and huffed. And I chased that dog around, but she knew. You know what I mean? She knew what she could do, what she could get away with, and I couldn't do anything because my sister-in-law would save her,
Yeah.
But even if she got a hold of you, she'd tear your ankles up for sure.
Well, fun fact, just so anybody that's listening, if you ride a horse and you're drinking, you can still get a DUI.
Really?
Yeah, even though the horse has a mind of its own and you can't control it, you can still get a DUI.
Is that just in Alabama? Is that in every state?
No, but my boss, he rides horses all the time, and that's what he loves to do. And one day he was in DUI class, and the cop was like, "Hey, what are you?" Not DUI, sorry, traffic violation class, but they were talking about DUIs. And the cop was like, "Hey, what do you think that you couldn't get a DUI on?" Well, he was like, "A horse, because you're not driving the horse. The horse has got its own mind." He said, "Nope, we can give you a DUI for that." Yeah, he said the only thing you can't get a DUI on is like a wheelchair that's a manual wheelchair that doesn't have a motor on it.
Wow.
So
I
learned something new today.
Well, yeah, here's another fun fact. If you're ever in Alabama, don't put an ice cream cone in your back pocket because it's against the law.
It is.
I don't know why, but good old state of Alabama, that's a law here.
Really?
Yeah. Something about a trash too. I think you can't sit on top of a trash can on Sundays or something like that.
It's old school laws. They never
still on the books.
Mind blown by these weird laws, fellas.
That's right.
Alabama's weird anyway. So.
Yeah. Hey, let's murderers and well, I can't say that word. Let's not catch the murderers and the people who do children and women wrong, but let's arrest you for having an ice cream cone in your back pocket.
I think it's also something about walking backwards or something.
Yeah, it's something crazy. The rule of thumb, you can't beat your wife with anything bigger than a thumb on Sundays, Anyway.
What? Oh my gosh.
Switching gears, man. So you say you've had a dogman encounter.
Yes. Yeah. It happened about maybe going on 3 years now. A buddy of mine and his wife, they were going on vacation and they asked me to house sit for them. So I decided to be that good friend. I was like, yeah, sure, man, I can do that for you. So what I did is I had a schedule. I would go early in the morning, then I'd go in the afternoon, then I'd go in the evening. Then my last time that I would go would be about midnight. Okay. So on this particular night, it was not a full moon. It was just a really dark night, kind of cold. I'm walking up about midnight, and as I'm walking up his driveway, you have to go to the side of his house to get to his backyard. And I always check the backyard and make sure there's nobody in there. I'm walking up there and I hear these coyotes going absolutely berserk. Like they sound like they're nervous. I grew up around coyotes, so I know what they sound like, but these things were yipping and they did not sound happy. Kind of dismissed it at first until I actually got into the back gate. And suddenly I smelled like feces and urine and rotted meat all together at one time. And I'm just like, oh man, something died in this guy's backyard. But then I hear noises like something's moving very close by. And, I'm only 5'10" and a half. So when there's something moving out in the dark, I'm going to puff up like that little puffer fish and make myself look bigger than I really am. And I'm like, hey, and for a minute it's quiet, and nothing else. So I move forward a little bit, but then I hear the movement again. Okay. And so I'm going, okay, there's somebody in this backyard. I'm going to have to go medieval on this guy. But before I do it, let's try again. So I puffed up again and hey, this time it wasn't silence. This time it was met by this really, really deep growl. When I say deep, fellas, I mean, I meant that growl went through my bones. I could feel it in my chest, like it was shaking my organs. Okay. And I'm just like, whoa, what is this? And I thought maybe mountain lion, maybe bear. But then logic kicked in. We don't have bear in the town that I lived in. We did have mountain lion though. So I keep going forward, and how when you're looking at shadows and something's hiding in a shadow, you can still see it moving.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's what I was seeing. I was seeing something in shadow kind of moving. It was like very random movements. It wasn't like moving side to side. It was just kind of like twisting and kind of ducking and everything because maybe it sensed that I saw it. Well, as I get to the very backyard, the security lights kick on. Okay, he had security lights in the back, and when the security lights kicked on, I am looking at a hyena. Like I see the face, I see the eyes, I see the ears and the body. Looks just like a hyena. All right. And the eyes are shining like an amber yellow. And I stop in place and I'm like, what the heck am I looking at? I couldn't even move. Like I wanted to run, but my brain's going, no, you got to stand still. If this is a predator, you run, you become prey. So I'm just standing there rooted in place, and this thing sees me. I can see that it sees me. It's looking right at me. And I'm trying to divert my eyes from it so I don't stare right in its eyes. But it leans up, it stands up, and I can hear a loud pop. as it stands up. So now this hyena, which was on all fours, is now on two legs. Okay. And it's staring at me for a minute. I can see its head moving side to side. Its ears are going up and down. And it suddenly charges forward. It charges forward maybe about 5 feet. Okay. It just stops on a dime. It doesn't move for a minute. It's just staring at me. I'm staring at it. And I know it sees me. I know at this point, I can't hide because it knows I'm there. And it's still, its head is going side to side. I can see it sniffing the air. Its upper lips are going up and down. And I'm just going, oh God, I'm going to die. I'm going to die. I don't know what this is. And I don't know how much time passed. It felt like maybe, an hour, but it was probably like 2 minutes. Finally, it stands up again and it starts to turn away. And before it turns completely away, it kind of looks at me over its shoulder. Then I see it, it's going downhill. It's going into the riverbed. And once that thing was out of sight, Wes, man, I grew rockets in my butt, man. I ran up the stairs into my friend's house. I'm locking his doors. I'm bolting his windows. I'm going through his kitchen drawers, grabbing all the knives that I can. And I call my buddy up and I'm like, hey, man, is there something you forgot to tell me? There was a hyena in your backyard. And my friend's just on the phone. He's going, hyena in Arizona, Ryan? Yeah, no, that wasn't a hyena. And I'm telling him, no, I saw a hyena in your backyard and this thing stood up on two legs. So he comes home with his wife and we wait till morning because I'm not going back out there again. I told him, I'm not going outside. You can go outside if you want to. I'm not going outside. There was a hyena out there. And in the morning, we go and check, and you can see the scuff marks where this thing was standing. You can see where it had run and stopped abruptly. So there was something in my friend's backyard.
So how big? How big do you think it was?
When he stood up, he was probably about 6.5 feet tall. That's bigger than me, so I wasn't going to tangle with it because I'm, like I said, 5'10". 6.5 feet tall is a lot taller than I am. So I'm just like, yeah, nope.
Sure. How much do you think it weighed?
If I had to guess, it wasn't a really big specimen. I mean, I hear about dogmen being like really buff. This one had more the build of a basketball player. Mm-hmm. So if I had to guess, maybe like 300 pounds, maybe closer to the 400 mark, but he wasn't super big. He wasn't super athletic. He was just, kind of almost like emaciated in a way.
See, I'm not, and there again, I'm not good with weights and I mean heights. I'm pretty good with. I've listened to several stories on Dogman, and you get into this thing was 600 pounds, but it was 10 feet tall, and it's like
right.
Math don't math.
Yeah, no, and he wasn't really. He wasn't really built. I mean, I hear all these stories all the time of how these dogmen have like Arnold Schwarzenegger or Lou Ferrigno builds.
Yeah. Well, that's one thing. Like if you take the biggest man in the world, and he's 7 feet tall, he might weigh 400 pounds.
Yeah.
10 feet tall, 1,000-pound, like the math don't math to me there. I mean, you take
right.
Look how big a horse is and how much it weighs, so it's
right.
You're either way off underestimating the weight, or it's way over what you think it is. And I know the mind plays a lot of tricks on you whenever you see things. Whenever I was a kid, we were coming home one night. I could call my mom and sister. They'd tell you the same story. We're sitting, matter of fact, in Old Dora. Mm-hmm. There was a red light there, and we just dropped my cousins off after church. I was 13, and we're sitting there and at a red light, and I just happen to glance over out of the left side of the car, and I see this triangle object, and it's coming across the sky, and it's just above the trees. But just above the trees, it was as big around as a basketball. So it was huge. You know what I mean? Because it's pretty. And I say just above the trees. It looked like it was just above the trees, but it
right.
It might have been higher, but it was a big object, and it's shaped like a triangle.
Whoa!
It's got 3 lights, on each corner, and they're white. And there's a red light in the middle that's strobing on and off. Well, we're watching, and it comes floating across really slow, and it just never made a noise. I could see the wind from it, or the trees blowing from the wind from whatever it was, or maybe the wind was just blowing and I'm equating it to that. But either way, it comes across, and it floats over by Boyd's school. Mm-hmm. You know where I'm talking about, where that light is there in Old Dora, Chris? Mm-hmm. Or where it used to be. I think there's a Dollar General now. Mining Museum, where the Mining Museum is. Anyway, so we're in that sharp curve. There was a red light there. So we're sitting there, and it floats over to T.S. Boyd's school, which is probably half a mile.
Yeah, probably. Mm-hmm.
So we watched it from there, and it gets over to where the school is, and this beam comes down out of it about halfway down, shoots right back up. And I remember going, whoa. And I looked over at my mom. Did you see that? And as I turned, it was gone. Just
wow.
Shot off, gone from standing still to gone. we get home and I'm hungry. Mom, what are we eating for dinner? And she was like, well, it's 9:15, 9:30. It's too late to eat. Just go grab a snack. Well, when we
Mhm.
dropped my cousins off, it was about 8 o'clock. So when we seen that, it might have been 10 after 8, and it was about a
Right.
15-minute drive home. So there's 30, 45 minutes there that are unaccounted for.
Whoa. Wow.
But it seemed like to me, I can remember the red light going from red to green, back to yellow, back to red, to green, to yellow, to red one more time. And then it's like it was gone. But there's 30 to 45 minutes there that none of us can account for. Don't
That's
know what
crazy.
happened, what it was, where it went. Maybe it was later. I know it wasn't. I'm playing devil's advocate here because I remember seeing the clock when we dropped my cousins off on the car.
Okay.
But it's hard for me to say just how big that object was or even what it was, which I know now in the advent of whatever this new stealth TR something that the military has. I was sharing with my aunt about it, and she said there was a guy that actually goes to church out here that used to fly with the military, and he flew one of those he would fly from Miami to Georgia back to Miami in a triangle, but it crossed over Walker County because he lived in Walker County. And
Wow.
apparently there were two of them, and one of them was a drone flown. He flew both of them basically. Wherever it flew, they flew together. And dude, this was in the early 90s,
Whoa. Wow.
90, 91, 92 to have that technology. Now, I'm not saying that is what I saw, but
Right.
I 100% know whatever we saw. Like if you Google search triangle UFO, that's what we saw, and my mom and sister can tell you the same thing. But I had the most, I didn't know if I was going to throw up or crap my pants. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, I know that feeling very well. Yeah.
11 or 13-year-old kid, you're trying to process it. My mom doesn't know what it is, and I've had several different instances in my life of just weird things. Some I share, some I don't.
Right.
But yeah, I totally get what you're saying whenever you say I don't know what I'm looking at, but I don't want to investigate,
Yeah, that's why I hate committing to the term dogman because, like I said earlier, it doesn't make sense because hyenas aren't canines. They have more in common with like felines and weasels than they do dogs.
Right.
So what was this? Was this like maybe a relic throwback of some kind of hyena or, I mean, I don't know. I honestly don't know. I don't know why a hyena would grow to be bipedal in any way. That doesn't make any sense scientifically, but I know a lot of people have seen the hyena types, so there's something to it. There is something to what I had seen, so I don't feel so crazy because I know other people that have seen it.
Sure. And I've heard different people talk about that as well. So you said it made a pop. You associate that as the same pop and noise other people talk about?
Yes. Yeah. Yes. And I kind of theorize it's one of two things. It's either their hips, moving into a different position so they can stand on two legs, or it's their feet. Their feet are cracking from the sudden shift of weight. So, I mean, until I actually shake hands with a dog, man, I'm not going to really be able to ask them, but they're just scientific theories that I have.
Sure. Okay. Any Sasquatch encounters or Bigfoot, or have you ever looked or?
There's a possible one actually, because I do a lot of Bigfoot investigations here in Arizona. We have the Mogollon Rim and we have the Mogollon Monster, which is Arizona's Bigfoot. And one time I was actually out with a paranormal buddy. I met him on YouTube and we knew each other for a couple of years, and he came out to Arizona to meet me and he wanted to go on an investigation. So we went, and it was late. I think it was about maybe 1 or 2 in the morning, and it was super dark where we were at. We had our flashlights and he had his pit bull. It was a very, very big pit bull, wasn't afraid of much. And we were in this on this cliff that had tons of trees around it. You couldn't see the city lights at all. And I got the idea that, we're out here, let's do some Bigfoot calls. Let's see if we can bring anything in. And so I was playing the Ohio Howl. I don't know if you guys have heard that yet.
Yeah, I know what it is. I'm familiar.
Okay, so I would play that. And I was doing it on intervals. Like I'd play the one whole session of the howl. I'd stop, wait about 2, maybe 3 minutes, try again. Then next time would be, wait 5 minutes, see what happens. On the third attempt, like his dog starts acting very jittery. She starts whining. She starts walking in circles, and her ears are down, her tail's between her legs. And I'm like, that's kind of weird. I don't know what's causing that. And from behind, maybe about 30, 40 feet away, I hear a whoop, whoop. And so we were looking around, I'm like, whoa. And I thought maybe, somebody was out here messing with us, or it was a coyote or something. We didn't see anything. There was no movement, nothing like that. And then we hear that whooping from a different area. So it had moved from behind us to in front of us. We hear like whoop, whoop. Then we hear this like rhythmic clapping. It's like, and that's when we looked in front of us. We got to a certain area with our lights. We saw eye shine that was maybe about 8 feet tall, maybe more like 7, right? 7 feet tall. We see these eyes looking right at us. And as our lights hit it, it ducked down behind some trees real quick.
Wow.
And, I'm sitting there, I'm going, oh, is this a Bigfoot? And so we played the howl again. And this time it responded with these really deep, so it didn't like what we were doing. So we started moving out. And as we're going down the hill into the valley, we can hear it behind us. We can hear it just tearing up trees as it's moving. We hear him pulling them up, kicking rocks at us. And we get down into a valley because, the place we were at goes down like this. And there's a valley right here. So you have the mountain walls on this side. And as we're walking this way, we can hear it following us along the cliff. And it's throwing rocks down at us as we're moving. And it didn't stop until we got out to his truck. And even as we got into his truck, we heard one last whoop, whoop, as it was moving away. So I think that was a big possible Bigfoot encounter.
Yeah, whatever it was didn't want you there for sure.
Yeah, no, we made it angry. I think, thinking back at it, the Ohio howl, we don't know what it was saying.
Yeah.
Okay, if that's a real howl, we have no idea what that particular individual was communicating. So maybe in a way we're kind of talking trash to a Bigfoot that was passing by.
And that's part of my, and I guess that's part of investigating or researching, but part of my thought process on these people that go out and do that, it's like, what if knocking on this tree with the stick, if that's a true way to communicate?
I've never understood the tree knocking.
I want to beat the brakes off you. You know what I mean?
Right. The tree knocking, I never get, Wes, because we've never actually seen a Bigfoot do it. We have never seen a Bigfoot pick up a branch or something like that and smack a tree. My theory on that is maybe it's a mouth pop that they do, or maybe they're clapping their chest or maybe their hands, but it's not tree knocking. I think when you do that, it's almost like you're talking trash to that Bigfoot. So
gorilla.
The Bigfoot hears you do it and he sees you do it, and that Bigfoot's like, so you've chosen death.
Yes, that's exactly right. I mean, think about a gorilla. They beat their chest. It sounds a lot like wood beating on a tree.
Yes.
And if I'm not mistaken, isn't that a sign of dominance or a sign of, hey, here I am,
Yeah,
So,
and the smell too. I mean, that's something that a lot of people don't take into consideration with Bigfoot encounters. You know how a lot of people report a really putrid smell with Bigfoot?
Mm-hmm.
Well, with mountain gorillas, like you said, not only do they knock their chest, mountain gorillas have a gland underneath their arms that when they feel threatened, they open that gland and it stinks horribly. That's meant to keep other males away or intruders away from their turf. So if Bigfoot's doing that, it's like, that doesn't mean he's happy to see you.
Right.
If you're smelling that, that's Bigfoot's way of going, hey, get the hell out of here.
Yeah, that's get away from me, right?
Yeah, that's him telling, get the hell out of here. Go away. I don't like you. Leave. Go.
Right.
So,
and that's one thing that's always blown my mind just about listening to these so-called researchers or quote unquote researchers is you're going out there and you're playing these sounds. And I know you're trying to get something on some sort of evidence. And even if it is evidence of any kind, even if it is aggression, it's evidence. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But like, it just blows my mind. It's like, I'm not going to go up to, whoever, MMA fighter and be like, hey man, you suck at fighting. You know what I'm saying? Like,
I'm not to Brock Lesnar and say that. Oh boy.
Right. It's just kind of insane. So, but there again, I do understand your research and you're trying to do something, and until we, I guess, discover a clan of Sasquatch, we don't know,
calls, though. I won't use calls. I won't use like the Ohio howl anymore because I got this recurring joke with my friend that, whenever we use a call, I could get a Bigfoot coming up to me going, what'd you say about my mama? I don't want to be in that position. So, or
tell you, hey, you got a pretty mouth. You know what I mean?
You got a pretty mouth.
I mean, it could go south. And I mean, as a deer hunter, and I know what calls are, hey, bring it in because this is a lady, or hey, come in because I'm challenging you. And it's like I don't know. It's almost like a lot of these researchers turn their brains off and say, hey, let's just
do. I think they do. I think they're so desperate to get to be that one that discovers Bigfoot that logic goes out the window.
Yeah.
And in my book, that's just something you can't do. You can't ever afford to throw logic or intellect or wisdom out the window. You always have to maintain those things, especially when you're out in the woods, okay? Because you can get hurt when you throw logic out the window.
Yeah, 100%.
Not just by a Bigfoot. I mean, there's snakes, there's bears, there's wolves, there's so much out there that could hurt you. You got to always be logical about what you're doing.
Well, if I go out here and I call you in, and I see you and I know you're there, but you kill me, I can't tell anybody about that. You know what I mean?
Right. Right.
You know,
Exactly.
if you end my existence, I can't tell anybody, you know. But there again, I do understand using what they quote unquote know or what they quote unquote think works. It's just kind of mind blowing to me.
It is to me too. And I'm part of that field, but it still boggles my mind at times. You know, I'm like, I don't understand why you guys do some of this stuff, but okay.
Yeah.
Better than you than me, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would say you're probably the first person I've ever had a conversation with that actually goes out into the field and does any kind of research. So I've never been able to ask that question on why, but it's just kind of mind blowing to me sometimes that people do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I've had people ask me if I'll use like the Aztec death whistle to call in the skinwalkers. And I'm like, no, why would I want to call one in?
Right. Right. I don't want it anywhere near me. That's for sure.
Right. What am I supposed to do? Be like, oh, well, I just want to shake your hand and say, hi, I'm glad you exist.
Yeah.
No.
Please don't eat me. You've given life to my book. Please don't eat me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right. I mean, with my luck, the skinwalkers and look at me and be like, so you really wanted to have a bad day today, huh?
Yeah. You really want to know what this is about? Let's talk. Yeah.
Not really. No.
No, I don't. I don't. I just want to keep doing what I'm doing.
Right.
Well, all right. Well, any other topics, any other things you're into that we haven't discussed?
No, that's about it. I mean, that's my main areas for now. For now, I will emphasize for now. So, because I'm always studying Native American lore. Okay, so I'm bound to look into so many other things, and when I do, I'm going to start sharing that information.
Sure. Well, cool, man. Well, I don't want to take up a whole lot more of your time, Krys. You got any more questions or any input?
No, I'm good. Thanks, Ryan, for being on here today, man.
Oh, my pleasure.
Definitely an interesting topic. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how many people are. Well, there's a lot of people that are open to it, but like for me, it's interesting. You know what I mean? I'm not one to think that we're the only thing that God created out there. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I'm, you know, I know there's been plenty of things that have been discovered just in the last 100 years that we thought didn't exist as well. You know, but I'm definitely not going looking for it.
Yeah. No, I mean, leave that to me. You know, leave that to me. You know? You can read my books when I get them done. You can learn all you need to know from the book. You don't have to go out and risk yourself or your friends. Just, you know, leave it to Ryan.
I appreciate that, man. So
Ryan's over here sacrificing himself. I got you, man.
I got you, man. This is all.
Somebody's got to do it. Somebody has to do it, right? If you're going to do it, you got to do it right.
Do you have any kind of timeline on your books, like when you think they'll be out, or?
Well, the Wendigo one, I'm hoping by the end of this year, maybe by Christmas. You know, the Skinwalker one, I want to take more time on. I'm reaching out to more people and I'm having to work on them so they'll open up. So I'd say maybe for the Skinwalker book, maybe February, March of next year.
Okay, cool.
So, but I'm working on it. You know, this Wendigo book, man, it's taking so much out of me. I was just telling Lyle Blackburn how much of a madman he is for writing all the books that he does.
Right.
And he's like, yeah, it's tedious. I'm like, yeah, you're BSing me. Tedious isn't the word for it. It drives you insane. Well,
that's the thing I've discovered with podcasting. I definitely am not good at it.
Yes, you will. Oh, enough with that noise. Stop that noise.
And it's definitely there's a lot more to it than just grabbing a microphone and going. You know what I mean?
I'm learning that too with my book, man. I mean, it's funny. I think I'm too much of a perfectionist for my own good. You know, because I got all these notes on the Wendigo, and I'll be writing my book like, oh, I got that finished, and I'll look at my note and be like, I forgot that part, and I got to go back and start writing it again. And I think I'm done again, and I'm like, and I forgot that part. So you see me angry typing, like,
yeah, that's the worst thing, man. Like I was a youth pastor for 10 years, and people would say, I don't know how you, like I would write an outline or you know, notes on my sermon, but I would never preach from it. You know, it would just always come from either memory or depending on the Holy Spirit to lead me, you know. And people's like, well, how do you not read your notes? I said, because if I read my notes, I'm going to be so lost. You know what I mean? I'm going to forget something and I'm going to be mad. And I find it
me all the time.
Recording intros and outros. Like it takes me, I recorded a 30-second outro or intro the other day, and it took me about 2 hours because I just like I'm trying to read it and not sound like I'm reading it, or know that I didn't say that right. So yeah, I'm probably my own worst critic. But
yeah, me too.
Cool. Well, all right, man. Any kind of website or anything like that you want us to tag and throw up?
Well, you can find me on Facebook. Just look up Ryan Paul Tremblay. You can find me on Instagram. Look up the Wendigo guy. Twitter, Ryan Paul Tremblay. You know, just hit me up. You know, if you want to add me up and have some conversations about cryptids or supernatural, the Wendigo, skinwalkers. I love conversation. You know me, Wes. I love to talk to people. So, if anybody wants to add me up just to shoot the breeze, feel free to do so.
Well, I would definitely say go at him, man, because he definitely posts some interesting things, some cool artwork. There's a lot of cool artwork that you post up and some interesting things that if you are experiencing some weird things or you've seen something weird, you may gain a little insight. And if nothing else, he'll definitely talk with you and share with you about maybe what you're experiencing, help you find a few answers or something. So
absolutely.
Well, all right, brother. We appreciate your time, man. If anything interesting happens to you, let us know. You want to come back?
Absolutely.
Back on anytime, and you get your book done. Let me know. We'll post it in the pin section so people can find it and all that good junk.
Right. Appreciate you guys.
Yeah, man. Thank you very much. And have a good week, man. We appreciate you, brother.
You too. Take it easy, guys.
See you, man.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah.